Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to AceGamesTV's coverage of Final Fantasy XIV A Realm Reborn. Without further ado, let's look at what we've got in the video today. Today I'm going to show you how you too can down Garuda, the mighty Primal, an element of wind. So Garuda is a two-phase fight, that's what you need to know first of all, and first phase is pretty much hiding from Garuda's attacks and killing adds. The second phase is usually all about basically surviving things and moving out of other things, which you should be used to by now. So let's go into a little bit more detail, shall we? The first thing to note is that your tank needs to decide what side of the room here that we're going to be fighting on, and the relevant DPS and other people obviously need to stand within line of sight of your healer. Now it's always best for a healer to stand back, obviously, because Garuda has some pretty nasty AoE attacks at melee range, and of course conal cleaves as well. So for this reason we want to stay back, but also in range for everyone else. Now of course I mention line of sight issues mainly because of these pillars. Now these pillars are integral to the fight and pretty much requires you to hide behind them during other mechanics later on to avoid her one-shot abilities. So essentially you have to keep her away from these rocks in any phase where you're not hiding from her, because her AoE damage and cleaves can actually damage the rocks themselves, which means you could have a premature destruction of a rock, and of course that would lead to a massive wipe as you would run out of things to hide behind for her special move. So keep her at range and keep in line of sight of your healer. Make sure you're on a side of the room, and of course simply move when the one-shot mechanic comes. And of course this will happen a few seconds into the fight. You will see this. She will disappear off of the map completely, and she will appear at one of the four sort of corners of the room. I'd say the four sides of the room. Imagine it like a cube, and she will appear at one of those faces of the cube. Simply hide behind the corresponding opposite facing side of one of these rocks and you will be fine. If you stand out in the open, you will be obliterated by her one-shot ability. So you may notice in the footage here I'm showing you there were some ads that came out. Those have to be nuked down as soon as possible, and that's literally what you have to do for that. If you don't nuke them down fast enough, it essentially buffs the boss to the point where she can pretty much one-shot you. So that's something to note. The other thing you may notice in this footage here is that the tank has unfortunately caused all of the rocks to despawn completely prematurely, which means that this will be a wipe. I'm showing you this particular piece of footage just to show you what not to do. Don't tank the boss anywhere near these rocks. You cannot afford to lose them earlier on. You may notice that the actual rocks have three phases of stability. So like you've got they're piled 3 high, they take some damage, they're piled 2 high, they've got 1 layer left, and then they get destroyed. When she gets low during the fight, she will of course despawn all of these rocks, and this begins phase 2, which we'll look at now. So as you can see here, we are deep into phase 2 here. This is the last phase. You can see that there is a whirlwind around here and there is a safe zone in the center. This is essentially a stack point. From this point onwards it's fairly simple. You also get the Razor Plume ad spawning as well, which you want to nuke down as fast as possible. They are still your priority target regardless of the boss's HP, unless she's on like nothing like now, and just pop your limit break. And that is essentially all of phase 2. Phase 1 is really where the difficulty lies, and indeed that's where the difficulty lies as well in the actual hard mode version of this, which I'll be covering in the future as well. But regardless, that's the end of Garuda, at least for now. Spoilers, and I'm going to cut off the footage now before we see any more spoilers of the story. We're just seeing her die here. So hopefully this video has been of use to you and have showed some interest into the mechanics behind this boss fight, and hope it helps you out explaining it to your pugs. My name's been Mioni of AceGamesTV. Thank you very much for watching my video, and I'll see you next time.